I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending March the 1st, brought to you in part by Cargill RNM, or Right Now Mineral. Grass changes with the seasons. Shouldn't your mineral? Right Now Minerals are formulated to allow you to match the mineral feeding program to the growing seasons, forage conditions, and nutritional needs of your cattle. Learn more at rightnowmineral.com. These guys are good. I know that's a motto that golf has used to try to encourage people to watch more of it. And if you guys have ever tried to play golf or rope calves or something that takes a lot of skill, you know what I mean. When you watch people do it and you think it looks pretty easy until you try to do it yourself, and it's very hard. But I tell you what, these packers are good. And it's just like watching people do other things that are kind of hard to do if you're playing a gentleman's game like pool or pitching washers or playing shuffleboard, but not cornhole or horseshoes, but a gentleman's game. And you see somebody that you're playing that really does a great job, and even though you're against him, you just have to admire him. And I think that's what we kind of have to do with these Packers now. I know I give the Packers a hard time just because I'm pro producer. I sure have nothing personally against them, and I do understand that the only reason that we ever gain anything as far as market position in the cattle business is from the generosity of the buyer of the Packers and the Packer buyers. Because otherwise they've pretty much got most all their needs covered. And you just watch what they do, the way that they negotiate. It's very impressive, the skills, the haggling. They're very precisioned in how they make moves and different things like that. Where you got all these cattle feeders out here. And last week, at the same time on this report, I tried to push an initiative called the Uncle Cry, or the Uncle Movement, which stood for Unified Negotiated Cattlemen's Leverage Effort. But the uncle said goodbye. It didn't take very long, not even a week. My little reports aren't going to do anything to make them change their ways. And it's very, very tough. You've got all these cattle feeders, or I say all of them. There's not very many negotiated cash sellers left. The ones that are left are the most hard-headed, independent, out for themselves guys that are left. That's why they're still doing it. It's admirable. We love them for it. The whole industry counts on them to establish a price. But being so independent, they're not going to get together. And it's just kind of like the old story about the young bull and the old bull. Young bull and the old bull walking across the pasture, and they walk up to a pasture full of brand new 2-year-old heifers that were shipped in there, and that young bull gets all excited and starts bellowing and licking and digging a hole and kind of curling his lip and going crazy. And he tells that old bull, he says, "Let's run down there and breed one of those heifers." And the old bull says, "Let's just walk down there and breed all of them." And everybody's heard that story. And the old bull is like the Packers. They're just precision. They know how to do things. You do not see them making it hard on each other. You don't see them blowing each other out. You don't see a Packer buyer coming in and buying all the available cattle, or cranking up his kills to 100% of capacity while the other ones are sitting at 80. They work together. It's very coordinated, and that's just how they are able to do things. And they're very calm, collected, and patient. And they just sit back and wait. They know they're going to get the cattle eventually. But we'll talk about the price we got on the fats here on Friday, and I called it a high noon showdown. Just basically turned out just about like they do every week, but that's kind of the way it goes on that. But let's look at your board for last week, or April live cattle futures. Monday was up 35 cents, Tuesday up 70 cents, Wednesday was steady or unchanged, Thursday down 7, and Friday down 30, with your April live cattle contract ending the week at 129.55, up 67 cents for the week. Your June we'll start talking about now because we lost February last week, but June ended the week at 120.42. So we've got to get something done between now and when we lose the April board, but everybody kind of figured that we would peak out sometime in March. March feeder cattle, Monday was down 40, Tuesday up 95, Wednesday up 42, Thursday down a buck, and Friday down a buck 65. Ending the week with March feeder cattle 141.22, down $1.68 for the week. April ended at 145.05, down a quarter for the week. Now, what I alluded to earlier, and these guys are good. The fat cattle deal, we were waiting, and everybody had held back and weren't selling any cattle. They knew we'd had 2 failed trades weeks out of the last 3. We knew we should have gained a lot more market position. We knew that this market ought to be well into the 130s by now, and everybody was just kind of waiting for it. And this was the week everybody was going to get it. Going to get that $1.30. We should be well into the 30s, but we're going to get the $1.30 this week, and then through March have the potential to at least get to 135, if not more than that, but to gain a lot of market position. Hardly any, even in your Iowa farmer feeders, hardly anybody sold any cattle. Your packers were playing coy. They were getting tough. Even in the auctions that they normally participate in through the week, they weren't acting like they needed a lot of cattle, even though we knew that they did, because they haven't bought a lot of cattle, hardly at all, any week so far this year. And we knew they were getting short bought right as they're really wanting to ramp up kills and take advantage of their best demand for beef purchases of the year, which is in the early spring, as some of these places that haven't had a lot of product on their shelves. They need to get filled up and get ready for grilling season and things like that. We've had horrible weather. This weather's going to break soon. People are going to go outside. They're going to start going back out to the restaurants. They're going to break their grill out. They're going to invite their friends over, and they're going to need a lot of beef to do all this. So, perfect storm, right? Everything's going to happen just like they want. All morning on Friday, or most of the early morning, everybody's sitting at 130, not going to let it go less than 130. 130, the guys are in the north at 130, guys in the south at 130. And then you start seeing a few little deals start selling at 130, but they got time on them. They're 130, but I don't need them for a couple of weeks because I'm going to clean house this week at a lower level. And so you start seeing that trickling in, but it was small little deals you didn't think too much about. Regional packers coming in, buying cattle, doing things like that. You even heard a deal of confinement cattle that were really clean at 132. Everything was going good, and then all of a sudden you had some large independent cattle feeders that still sell negotiated cash, but selling hunks. They saw an opportunity to sell a lot of cattle spread out over the next couple of months or so. And, we're not exactly sure what everybody got, but what, word is most of them were at 130. Well, for the guys that want to sell week to week and talking about a spot cash market, it became impossible for them to get 130 whenever they had bought so many cattle for out front delivery, getting them through the rough times, getting them through the time whenever we're needing to gain the most market position, and they're selling those for what the guys are wanting for this week when we haven't even got into that good yet. It just took the rug out from under them once again, and 128 ended up being the market. And everybody sold at 128 because we hadn't had a good dispersal of the show list for quite a while, so there'll be a lot of cattle moved at 128, and if the packers turned them in right on mandatory price reporting, there'll be a lot of cattle bought and secured this past week for the 15 to 30 day delivery. Be interesting to see, but there should be a lot of cattle on there for that. But big movement likely at 128, and 205 was the dress price. Not as many cattle at 205, but 205 dress price up there. And if you got some cattle that aren't too dirty, that are pretty fat and going to have a good dressing percentage, well, then that 205, it may be a better deal, or likely is a better deal. But let's look at your box beef cutout values. Choice cuts average trade for last week, $219.98, up $226 compared to the previous week. Select, your average trade for select cuts last week, $214.63, up $227. You got a choice select spread of $5.35 with a pretty decent move of 556 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter, decent, a lot better than last week because we had some shutdowns the previous week, but not quite as good as a year ago. 603,000 head for the week, 25,000 less than the previous week, but just 8,000 less than the same week a year ago. What else happened through the week? We had the inventory report for January 1st, 2019. It was about a month or a little more late because of the government shutdowns. We had been tipped that it was going to say that your supplies, your inventories were bigger once again, and they were continuing to increase or rebuild our herds, which all of us that are real close to things and are watching and paying attention all the time, thinking, how in the world could we be? And so I was really set to balk that inventory report. But the way it come out, actually, I'm going to buy it pretty good. The total inventories of cattle and calves only marginally higher, not even 1%. So just marginally higher, 94.8 million head, 500,000 more than the same than the previous year. So that's not that big a deal in the whole scheme of things. But what it did show is that the second half of 2018, your inventory start to plunge. But your calf crop, they called it 2% higher, but the first half was 3% higher. And then in the second half, only 27% of the calves that were born in 2018 were during the second half. And that pulled that back a whole nother percent. So you come out for 3% more in the first half when most of your calves were born, and then it pulled the total back to 2% because it was so light for your fall calves and things like that. I continue to preach to people, and I continue to have people call and complain and say, you don't know what you're talking about. We don't have enough fall calvers. You guys that are trying to pull those calves and have calves and put them in hot boxes, putting them in the floor of your pickup, putting them in your garage, putting them in your office, how miserable is that? You can calve those cows out on green grass if you'd like. I know it doesn't work for some of you guys fairly far up into the Midwest. Doesn't work at all for you guys in the mountain states because sometimes you send those cattle to elevation to graze, and I realize that. But for your people in the bulk of eastern Kansas, Missouri, a lot of you guys going out into Kentucky, going off into Tennessee, Arkansas, and the southeast, places like that, a lot of Oklahoma, you guys can fall calf. I tell people, if you don't fall calf if you don't want better demand for your calves at every level of production, because they will be. Look how short we are of lightweight cattle right now. That's because we didn't have near enough fall calves. And these guys that looked at that inventory report and saw that only 27% of the calves born in 2018 were in the second half of the year, you think they're not going to get aggressive buying these lightweight calves this week and on through the rest of the early spring? You dang right they are. But if we had a more level amount of calves born in the spring and in the fall, or the first or second half of the year, our markets wouldn't be near as volatile, it wouldn't be near as dangerous, and we would have better demand for our product annually as the whole year went. But I don't know how you'd say it any more clear. When everybody's doing the same thing, you got to know that there's going to be too much of something at once. But weather kind of hits the market again. Had bad weather again this past week. Got bad weather coming through early this week. It's likely going to stunt the offerings in many of your big heavy volume sales on Monday. Joplin sent out their text. They're only calling for 1,000 head on Monday. That's unheard of. Doesn't sound like Oklahoma City, Oklahoma National Stockyards are going to have many cattle either because of the weather's been so bad. Everybody's sitting at home watching the American on TV. Nobody got any cattle up much. But if you look at your feeder cattle markets for last week, your real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the week at 139.24. That was down $1.75 compared to the previous week. You wonder how that RTI compares with your cash CME feeder cattle index. The latest available was 139.23. It was 1 penny off. So that is a good precursor, and it's real time. It's automated. You can watch it update just as quick as your computer refreshes, and it is a great indicator of what your cash feeder cattle index will be. Cash feeders in your sales last week, 1 to 3 lower. Spots sharply lower in some places that were getting weather, where you had certain buyers just kind of pull out, and it left a hole in the market on certain weights and classes and certain locations. But those will bounce back here as we get going this week, hoping that they get back into the market and things start getting back to normal. But we still got more weather to get through, but it is going to turn one of these days. Your calves in the middle part of the country are uneven in places, especially late in the week. They turned sharply higher, but other places that just couldn't handle them, also due to the weather, they were just kind of uneven. And a lot of places didn't have enough calves to sell or to establish a market, because most all of their producers calve in the spring. We say spring, but they calve in the dead of winter because evidently they enjoy it. But so it was very uneven on calves this week in the meat of the country. But in the southeast, where guys are ordering cattle to be shipped to them, shipped west to get ready to turn out on grass or late graze out wheat and things like that, they were sharply higher, $2 to $5 higher fully in the southeast, with many spots as much as $10 higher, especially on the right kind of steer calves. But I expect that to follow through within the middle part of the country. And as soon as this weather straightens up, guys, as soon as this weather straightens up, it'll be your calves and your stocker cattle first. They are going to get wild. And then if we ever find a bottom to some of these feedlots, but a lot of them have been froze now. And if it starts to warm up in the next few weeks, you're going to think, oh, things are going to get better. No, the bottom is going to leave those lots. And guys might be out there walking through the alley and just go out of sight, because those lots have been frozen so long. I know they're froze dried on top, but you can't believe how much moisture is under there whenever it starts getting significantly warmer. Talk about some feeder auctions late in the week last week. Erickson, Nebraska, not your typical community Saturday sale, goat, pig, and sheep deal, hobby farmer type deal. No, big time mainline. Erickson, Nebraska still has a Saturday sale, and it works for them. I would hate to have a business that I had to be at every Saturday for the rest of my life, but those guys are dedicated. They've got a good market there year round, but week in, week out, some of the highest cattle that you see in the whole Midwest right there at Erickson, Nebraska on a Saturday. But look at this big string of cattle that they had come in. Olson cattle there, a long string of them, steers and heifers, everything. They were all black. They were all hay fed. They weren't heavily creeped and carrying a lot of extra flesh. They had all been vaccinated, but you don't have to have a certain program with a certain color ear tag and signed off by the vet and everything. Just make sure that they're all vaccinated and worked. They've had 2 rounds of shots. And if you've got a good reputation, then people believe you, and it'll be enough for them. But don't have to have a program to know that those cattle are vaccinated and ready to go. But look at some of these quotes. 443 head of steers, weighed 511 pounds, bring 206. 390 of their bigger brothers weigh 587 and bring 204.75, way higher. And but pretty green calves there, and top quality. Look at their sisters. 352 head, weighed 471, 187.50, and 201 of them weigh 546 at 181 and a quarter. That's what it's coming to, guys, and it's going to get wilder than that. But we talked about the Southeast, how much higher they were. Your average on 5-weight steer calves, 5 to 600 pound steer calves throughout the entire Southeast, your average price on them this past week was $154.79 for your steers. That was nearly $4.50 higher than the previous week, but nearly $15 lower than the same week a year ago. Remember, we didn't have all this terrible weather. People already had most of their grass cattle put together. It's just the weather's been so bad this year, we haven't realized all of it yet. But what about some Mexican steers? Santa Teresa livestock auction down on the border. Mexican cattle coming north. 69 head of them weigh 536 pounds, $164. Burwell, Nebraska, another one of those premium type sales up there near the Sand Hills of Nebraska. Top prices, best cattle in the world. Friday sale. Burwell, a DV auction customer there, you can watch them every Friday. 66 head, weighed 774 pounds at 149. That's nearly 800 pounds at 149. That's a full $10 higher than what your index is running. Bloomington, Wisconsin can sell big cattle out there. I tell you what, talk about farmer feeders. Bloomington, Wisconsin on Friday, 73 head of steers, weighed 805 at $146. That's a look at your week's markets from a home DV auction office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.